Well, good evening, everybody. It's about 11 o'clock here in Les Abdelone, and there's a few interesting things happening in the GGR right now. So I was trying to explain it in a post, and I thought it's so graphic and so interesting in some ways to explain to people what actually is happening that the only way I could do it properly was with a live. So some of you may have noticed that Kirsten seems to be trucking along at 6.4 knots or 6.5 knots or something. Certainly not motoring along at 6.5 knots. There's no way Kirsten would be motoring at the moment, but it needs a bit of an explanation as to what's happening. And I bring up this subject often when we're talking about weather forecasting and the graphics that we see on the tracker screen and so on. So I'm going to try and walk you through it. This could be a bit of a boring alert. So boring, alert, watch out. Some people are going to think, oh, what's he on about? So just go back and read a book or watch TV or whatever, but some will be interested in what's going on because it's quite unique, and it could blow all of my ETAs out of the water because there's a little bit of a change, and I'm going to try and explain it. So if it all sounds a bit too boring or complicated, I'm sorry, but some people, I don't want to show you that one yet. I'll show you this one, I think it is. Yeah, okay, so here's the tracker screen, and I'll also at the end of this, if I remember it and get it right, I'll scan through your comments and so on and look to see if there's any questions there. And I hope this is live because I didn't ask. I just decided to do this. I didn't ask Jane to look at it, so I hope it's transmitting. Anyway, it should be. So, okay, tracker. You can look at Kirsten here, dead straight line, okay? And she's sailing. You've probably seen my post. She's sailing in what appears to be conditions with no wind, all right? And the first thing she's only about 120 miles from Les Abdelone at the moment, which is over here. If we look at the current speed, Kirsten's doing 6.4 knots. Simon's doing 4.1 knots, and Avalanche is doing 6.4 as well. If you look at the photo I put on a poster 2 hours ago, she was sitting in a hole with a deep blue hole with no wind, and she was doing 6.4 knots. And I often talk about, this is what's happening if this graphic is correct. And then I mention also that when there is not much pressure gradient, right, what I'm saying there is you need to have a pressure gradient from a high to a low, and as it's like a hill in pressure, and that's what creates wind. Okay, but if there's no pressure gradient and it's all open like this, it's nearly impossible for the computer to actually come up with a suggestion as to what might be correct wind or incorrect wind. And I'll now try and bring up the windy graphic. Okay, so I hit that. Okay, and this is now I've got to get onto that. Okay, so these are isobars, okay, and the way it works, some of you might be bushwalking and so on, and you've got a topographical map that shows you a hill or a valley, okay, and so this is a low pressure system here with a center of 991 millibars, and this one's a low pressure system that's got a center of 986 millibars, and over here you've got a high pressure system which is a high of 1017 millibars. So if you can imagine, this is the high mountain and this is a low valley. This was a map. These lines here represent the pressure gradient going from the top of the mountain down into the bottom of the valley. Okay, and how steep is that? Well, it depends on how far apart these contour lines are. These are contour lines of pressure gradients, right? And each one of these represents, if I remember rightly, about 2 degrees. In fact, these ones are listed with numbers. So this one here is 1,016 millibars or hectopascals. This one's 1,018 hectopascals. So it's going up. All right. I don't know why I'll just drop this back a bit to try and get some more numbers. Oh, here we go. Here's the numbers here. I don't know whether you can read this. I'm just explaining the principles now of these pressure gradient lines here. So this one's 1,014. This is 1,002. So every line represents 2 millibars. Okay, and so you can see here, because the lines are close together, the wind speed is increasing. The closer the lines together, the bigger the differential between the mountain coming down into the valley. That's like a steep cliff. Okay, and yet over here you'll see they're wider apart. There's a lot less wind, because instead of being a really steep cliff going down into the hole, it's a little bit more gentle. And of course, over here where they're wide apart, it's like a flat plateau, and you get to the top of the hill and there's just nothing there. So that's a bit of a quick definition of pressure gradients, and I hope that made sense. And you can see here in the Bay of Biscay, they're really wide apart. That's why there's calm winds. There's not a lot happening, okay? Now, and this is actually Kirsten's position right now, right? But before I go there, the actual date and time of this particular map is actually at 1300 UTC or 1300 Zulu. So that's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're 2 hours the other side of that. So that would have been 3 o'clock this afternoon. Now, 3 o'clock this afternoon, this is easy to see. You've got a low pressure here. That's easy with the big stuff going around. And the weather associated with that low pressure pretty much finishes about here, okay? Because then you come over here and it's all new stuff. You've got a high pressure there of 1017. You've got another high pressure here at 1017. You've got another one here at 1017. And you've got a little low over here at 1013. So what this means is that these are high pressure centers and they're topped out. So these are the tops of the mountains, but there's not much in it. There's like a flat plateau, okay? And so there's no heavy movement of air between the highs and the lows, and so it's all very calm, right? So at 1 o'clock or Zulu or 3 o'clock this afternoon, you can see, okay, this pressure driven or weather driven influence from these lows is sort of just cutting the corner of Biscay. When you get into Biscay, there's nothing there. So I'm going to click that through now every hour, just 1 hour, and you watch what happens. One of those lows, the center of the low over here, just disappeared, right? It's moving. And then I click it again another hour. You can see this one shrinking, okay? Press it another hour. That one's just about disappeared. And now you got the whole lot just in 3 hours changing into a high pressure system, and you can just see a little bit of air coming through there, right? But what I'm trying to show, and I'll click it through another hour, boom, it's gone, right? So now you've got this big hole here, big hole there. And so the computer's really challenged now to try and work out what the hell's going on. And so the graphic that we're seeing is really the best guess of a computer program that's got very little data to work on, following the contours of the pressure and the inputs from the various stations around here that are giving pressure inputs, because there's not much pressure change. There's nothing changing. So if we now, at this point, we're nearly up to current standard now. I'll just push it through, and now all of a sudden there's this change in the weather. This is what's really going to screw up all my ETAs, because if we come back, this is the pressure situation right now, effectively. And you can see here now, what's the big deal in the thing? It's starting to come in the influence of this low pressure system over here. See, the two low pressure systems are now joining into one bigger one. It's getting stronger, right? And so this is starting to influence what's happening here. So if we then enlarge this, so there's 2 points to this story that I'm telling you. One is that don't worry, Kirsten's not motoring. I can guarantee you that. She's just sailing in breeze that the computer hasn't picked up yet, and it's a good breeze. And here it is here. 2 hours ago, even though Kirsten was sailing, the windy was showing a lot less wind, but now it's starting to fill in. And this is showing 9 knots. This is forecast wind at 9, which means it's probably going up to 12 knots. And again, this has only just started to happen. Here comes the pressure gradients that weren't there previously, and now it's turned up. So Kirsten's got breeze. And the amazing part is, if I click this through every hour, you can see what's going on here. So you can see the pressure gradient from that low pressure starting to come in and influence the whole of the Bay of Biscay. And so now this is the I'm pointing this with my fingers and realizing you can't see. This is what's driving the weather, and this is new to Biscay in the last sort of 24 hours. And it's going to change all my ETAs. I just put them up. We did it for the press release this afternoon, and they're all out the window. I haven't worked them out at all yet. I just wanted to get this up and explain to people why Kirsten appears to be flying when she doesn't have any wind. Well, the reality is the computer model isn't correct there. And so that's what's going on, because there's plenty of breeze here and there's plenty coming. This is all rushing in around to this low pressure, and this is coming from the other relative highs, those little highs that were forming into and disappearing. There now is pulling air in. So I've got to redo all the ETAs now, because looking at Simon, all my data was showing that Simon would get in tomorrow afternoon. He could well get in tomorrow morning, right? And my suggestion that Kirsten would be late on Friday. She could now come in early on Friday, right? I've got to redo all that, and let's just see what happens. But this is now coming through to Thursday. This is 9 o'clock in the morning tomorrow, and you can see there's wind all the way. There's been wind all the way into Les Sables d'Olonne, and he's getting very close to the Sable d'Olonne, so he'll ride this straight through. And there's plenty of breeze there. It's all changed. So anyway, I hope that explains a bit about what's happening. I'll go back to the. Hang on, I can't transition it there. I've got to come back here and swap over to the. Okay, here's the tracker again. See the difference in view? It's really. Now I've got to go back here. It's really showing a different story, and this may take. I've just refreshed this before I came on air, so it's doing the best job it can. But if I walk this through, this is for 10:30 tonight local time in France. You'll see the breeze. All of a sudden, those holes have gone, and it's starting to match up with what's there. So the computer's just lagging behind. This straight line is not Kirsten motoring. It's her sailing like a dream right on the button where she wants to go. She's probably got spinnakers up, doing all that sort of stuff and going for it. And the breeze is there now, but she's had that turned up, 4 hours or so ago, 4 or 5 hours ago, and it just wasn't showing on the graphic. Anyway, we pull it through, and you can see that breeze is still holding. This is now 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. That's 11:30 in the morning tomorrow, and Simon could well hold that through. He's currently showing on current weather 4 knots. His distance at the moment from Les Sables d'Olonne is only 74 miles. So if he is doing 5 knots, only 14 hours from now. And so we've got the midnight, 14 hours, 2 o'clock. Yeah, maybe lunchtime tomorrow in Les Sables d'Olonne. We just got to wait and see. It depends. You can still see it. There's a bit of an edge there. It's softer here than it is up there. But the model is starting to catch up now. It's dramatically different. This graphic now is dramatically different than what we were seeing 5 hours ago. Okay, so Simon's on a bit of a roll there. He's going to get in, maybe lunchtime or something, and that's going to affect Kirsten's time as well. And then we'll have to wait and see. But it's changed. So that's it. You can you can all maybe go back to sleep now. I don't know. I don't know whether this will wake you up or not. But anyway, I just had to explain that. So now I've got to rethink all my ETAs, and I might just leave it till 7 o'clock in the morning or something. But anyway, enjoy the rest of your evening. And yep, that's sailing, I suppose. We'll see you tomorrow.